The OECD countries' Program for International Student Assessment, PISA, P-I-S-A, measures 15-year-olds' ability to use their reading, mathematics, and science knowledge and skills to meet real-life challenges. According to last year's PISA report, Taiwan ranked third in math, fifth in reading, and fourth in science in the world. In these results, Taiwan was behind Japan, Macau, Hong Kong, and Singapore, which are countries that push their kids pretty hard. Here in Taiwan or in Asia, there's a strong emphasis on STEM education, that's science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, aiming to prepare students for careers in these fields and to foster innovation and technological advancement. And Taiwan maintains high academic standards with rigorous curriculum designed to challenge students and promote excellence in various subjects. Over the last few episodes, we mentioned that Taiwan is the world's biggest semiconductor manufacturing country and has one of the best healthcare systems in the world. I think it's because of our school system, which is designed to train really hardworking smart people from electrical engineers and coders to doctors and nurses. And according to multiple sources, South Korea, China, Japan, Hong Kong, Taiwan, Singapore, Russia, and South Africa have some of the world's toughest education systems. So while the test scores are incredible, it also comes with a cost. We can't push our kids until they break. But with results like the numbers we just mentioned, the economy is bound to want the result to continue. And economies aren't generally focused on mental health until it affects the bottom line. So, what are the alternatives? That'll be the topic of our conversation today with an educator. I'm your host, Joey Chou, and this is Beyond the Reefs. Hi, you're listening to Beyond the Reefs, a show produced by Radio Taiwan International. Here we talk about the socio-economic issues that are faced by Taiwan and their broader impacts around the world beyond the reefs of this island nation. Around the same time last year, the Education Ministry released a statistical report indicating that Taiwan's performance in the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, SDGs, for quality education are better than the world's average. The UN SDGs consist of 17 goals that make up the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. World leaders agreed upon the agenda in 2015 to secure the rights and well-being of everyone on a healthy, thriving planet. The educational goals of the SDGs is to ensure inclusive and equitable quality education and promote lifelong learning opportunities for all. The goal is then further broken down into several targets. For the school completion rate, which refers to the proportion of those who have completed different levels of education, Taiwan reflected a 99.98% completion rate for elementary schools, 99.66% rate for junior high schools, and 98.67% for senior high schools. All of these are much higher than the world's average. And for the overage rate, which measures the percentage of students who are older than the expected age for their grade, Taiwan's overage rate for elementary school students is 0.01%, much lower than the world's average of 9.8%, while the rate for primary school students was 0.05% compared to the world average of 10.3%. This also means that there is a high expectation for kids' academic progress to keep up with their age group, and a lot of stigma for those who don't. As you can imagine, that's not good for the child's mental health. Today, we're going to explore some alternatives with the principal of Bing Jiang Experimental School, Pauline Chen.
Actually, I'm an English teacher. For the past 35 years, I've been teaching English in middle school. And currently, I'm Bing Jiang Junior High School principal, which is also an experimental school and a world school at the same time. For the past 6 years, I was the former principal of Gezhi Junior High School, which is also the first public bilingual education school in Taipei. I was so lucky to get the Excellent Teachers Award in English teaching in 2009. And one of the particular special experience is that I was the secretary of Taipei's delegation to join the International Children's Games during the past 20 years. I used my English ability to register for the games players' participation and accommodation and solve some international problems. Also, I am currently in charge of the teachers training for English teachers in Taipei. So I'm the leader of Taipei Advisory Group of English teachers. My expertise include bilingual education, international education, English teaching, and school management.
So let's tackle some of these individually. So Taiwan, first off, we have a 2030 bilingual policy. So bilingual education is becoming increasingly more important here in Taiwan. Before we get into the bulk of the questionnaires, how do you think we're doing on that front? Because you've been doing experimental education, so maybe you hear something from your industry friends or fellow educators. How are we doing in bilingual education?
Okay, currently in Taipei, we have 108 bilingual schools regarding the elementary schools and the junior high schools. So we generally adopt the strategies of CLIO and the EMI teaching strategies. CLIO means content and language integrated learning. And the EMI means using English as the medium of instruction. But in junior high schools and elementary schools, few teachers use EMI teaching approaches. In higher education, they encourage teachers or professors to use this approach. But for middle schools or elementary schools, they do not really encourage this approach. Still, some teachers are adopting this, depending on the student's capability or school's whole situation. Some scholars or some professors think that it's really too hard for students to understand the knowledge or concepts or the cognitive levels of discipline content to be delivered in English. So they think that CLIO is better, content and language integrated learning for elementary school and junior high.
So, yeah, that is one of the things that not just educators, but also policymakers have to keep in mind. Now, speaking of policy, in 2019, Taiwan's Ministry of Education implemented the 108 curriculum guidelines. This is the overarching guidelines steering the country's predominantly exam-oriented 12-year education towards developing students' critical thinking, innovative communicative skills, and social participation. How has that changed the dynamic in the classroom? Did you notice any change since the year 108? And by the way, here in Taiwan, the year 108 is 2019.
Actually, there is much change in the dynamics of the classrooms or the campus. Okay. First of all, we all know that the 108 curriculum guidelines is trying to develop talent in every student. Nurture by nature, promoting lifelong learners, as we know. And its original spirit is trying to adopt the holistic education. Therefore, they hope that this innovation or this revolution can provide adequate education to elicit students' joy and confidence in learning. And after 5 years of implementation, I noticed that the teachers are encouraged to seize more chances to have professional development. Let's say PLC, it is professional learning community. It's very important for teachers to form a group, and then they try to have their own study time within their own schools or inter-schools. These teachers have realized it's a trend to develop more attractive, innovative, or profound teaching methods and strategies to create more authentic environments for students' learning. And we know that 108 curriculum guidelines focuses or emphasizes the competency-driven instruction and assessment. So the core competency includes spontaneity, communication and interaction, and social participation. So students are also facing the change of their learning modality. They are highly encouraged to have more self-directed learning strategies. And all the teachers try to boost their potential of talent and try to fulfill the theory of multiple intelligences, try to find their own strengths. And we also observe that students are more willing to participate in class or task-based activities in the curriculum. So when they do their assignments, it's more flexible and more interesting. So in this way, they try to have more of the competency requisition by way of teachers, industrious and careful and precise design of the materials.
You mentioned a Mandarin phrase, 素养导向的教育哦.
Yes,
素养
yes.
in Mandarin, by the way, for everyone, it sort of suggests character building as well. And I think to involve character building in primary education is something that I dare say Taiwan and certainly a lot of Asian countries haven't really focused on.
Yes.
So I think in spirit, that is a great direction, but in actuality and execution, that's a tough one to do. So in your opinion, what other changes and improvements would you like to see in future curricular guidelines? Just ideas that hasn't been fully realized from the 108 curriculum guidelines that you can see that can be adjusted in the future.
Okay. I think that besides the design materials, methods by teachers and the training, scaffolding for teachers, and also I think that assessment can be viewed in other perspectives as well. For example, we can develop more different measures of learning assessment. We often say that multiple assessments can be carried out in different disciplines, including portfolio assessments, task-based assessments, document assessments, oral reports, or posters, exhibits, and so on. So students can be encouraged to have more forms of performance to let people, let parents, let teachers witness how they have changed their ways of learning. That is the main dynamic that appears in students.
Primarily, what would you say is the way people are assessed in Taiwan's education currently?
Primarily, I still have to say it's the written forms. Written forms in many schools still occupy a large rate of the assessment forms. However, we try to develop more other forms of assessments. And I think that's very important in bringing the dynamics in classrooms, in students' learning and teachers' teaching.
Right, that is a tough one. To help students receive the proper credentials, if you will, to go through school systems and have their abilities be represented, but at the same time trying to use different ways to assess them.
Yes.
So parents care a lot about this, of course. So aside from traditional educational structure, what other alternatives do you think parents have?
Okay, I think that as we always mention about the experimental education, it's a kind of choice for the parents to choose, trying to find a school appropriate for their kids. So as we know that there are 3 types of experimental education. We have school-based experimental education and non-school type experimental education, and governing the commissioning of the operation of public elementary and high school to the private sector. In Chinese, we say 学校形态实验教育 and 非学校形态实验教育跟鼓励私人办学实验教育. So experimental education can be a good alternative for parents to choose from because they guarantee the parents' rights to choose proper school for their kids.
Okay. I'm curious, out of the 3 different types of experimental schools, do they all work well with international educational structures? As in, can students successfully ascend to a higher level of education with all 3 systems? And if so, what are some examples of effective implementation of experimental school structures?
Okay, I'd like to take the schools in Taipei, for example. We have 12 public experimental schools in Taipei, including the elementary school level and the junior high and the senior high. So there are 2 senior experimental senior high school and 4 junior high schools and 8 elementary schools. And these schools should try to develop main experimental rationale of their school. For example, some school can focus on the STEAM, STEAM, okay, STEAM.
Sorry for interrupting. What is STEAM?
STEAM are the initials of 5 words. They are science, technology, engineering, art, and math. So art is also emphasized in this term, from STEM to STEAM. Okay, and Heping Shixiao in Taipei emphasizes the self-directed experimental rationale. And also, my school, Bing Jiang, is an IB school, which is an experimental school at the same time. So we try to develop our rationale by combining the IB inquiry-based learning and SDGs, Sustainable Development Education, combining these two mainstreams as our experimental rationale. And also, the other school can use the liberal education as their rationale. Also, Fanghe is a school consisting of the senior high school and the junior high school, and their main experimental rationale is expeditional learning, 户外远征教育, expeditional, okay? So all these try to confirm the competency-driven instruction and assessment at the same time by trying to surpassing the 108 curriculum guidelines. The other character of the experimental school is that the school size can be very small. For example, in junior high schools, we have only 4 classes in each grade, and every class only consists of 20 students. So altogether, in one grade, from 7th grade to 9th grade, we have only 80 students. Therefore, the rate of the teacher and the student can be very small. So students can be taken good care of learning and the characters and, career design and personality shaping.
It seems like there should be no problem for school-based, non-school-based, and what's the third type? I'm sorry, it escapes me.
Yeah, that's a little bit hard for English. Okay, the technical term is trying to transfer the operation of the school management to a private sector, 私人办学.
Okay, I see. It sounds like there should be no problem for students coming from these structures to, say, apply for college in the USA, right?
Mm-hmm.
All the credentials are there.
Yeah, they can go to the experimental schools if there is enough capacity for these students to enter the higher level. But they can still go to the ordinary schools, just like other students. I should say that the surpassing 108 curriculum guidelines, the spirit is that we respect students' learning motivation and the learning pace in experimental schools. We also focus more adaptive education and differentiated education in these experimental education systems.
When you rely on policies, especially from the Ministry of Education, to make these nationwide curriculum changes, it might happen every 10 years, maybe if we're lucky, every 5 years. But along the way, we're talking about a couple or even more than that of generations of school kids who've already been affected by this new curriculum change. So if they're inefficient, they're not at their best state, then you're talking about the future of a student, of a person being changed forever. So experimental schools, tell me if it's correct or not, Pauline, is kind of giving the parents and the students an option that has more mobility.
Yes.
And just more choices for the students, while also being able to bridge to the more traditional assessments that students are required to go through.
Yes, you can say that way. Okay, and I want to say one thing, that is, innovation is also emphasized in experimental school or experimental education, innovation, okay?
I have been Joey Chou, and this is Beyond the Reefs on Radio Taiwan International.